4 years ago, my parents invited 50 people to what they called my birthday surprise. I was 23, living in their basement after my third job fell through, and I believed them when they said they wanted to celebrate me. Looking back, I was exactly where they wanted me. Context you need. My brother Clark is 2 years older, finance degree, six figures at 24, engaged to Savannah, whose family owns commercial property across the county. My parents, Robert and Lauren, built their social identity around Clark. Every church event, every dinner party revolved around his promotions and his car and his future in-laws. I was the other son, the one who got let go from jobs, the one whose girlfriend Cheryl left because I, quote, couldn't get my act together, the one my dad called a $30,000 mistake whenever tuition came up. The party was Saturday in March. I walked into our backyard and saw a tent, catering, string lights, 50 guests including family and neighbors and coworkers. A banner said, Bon Voyage. I thought maybe they were sending me somewhere as motivation. Then my dad grabbed the microphone and thanked everyone for coming to celebrate, quote, finally getting rid of our biggest mistake, unquote. People laughed. Okay, chat, I need you to sit with this for a second. This man walked into his own backyard thinking his parents, the people who are supposed to be your first fans, your day ones, were throwing him a party. String lights, catering, 50 people. And his brain is doing backflips trying to make it make sense, like, oh, maybe they're sending me on a trip to find myself. Because that's what you do when you love your parents. You give them the benefit of the doubt even when the math ain't mathing. And then his dad grabs a microphone. A microphone. This wasn't a whispered insult in the kitchen, this was a produced moment. They rehearsed this. Someone ordered that banner. Someone called the caterer and said, yes, we need appetizers for 50. We're publicly disowning our son. The logistics of cruelty here are insane. And the guests laughed. 50 people watched a father call his son his biggest mistake, and their response was laughter. That tells you everything about the ecosystem this kid grew up in. He wasn't failed by two parents. He was failed by an entire community that decided he was the acceptable target. My mom walked around handing out printed itemized lists. What I owed them since birth, $387,000. Every meal, every school supply, every doctor visit calculated with a running total. Then Clark connected his laptop to a projector. A slideshow of every rejection letter I received. Screenshots of Cheryl's breakup texts. A termination notice I never showed anyone. He had gone through my room, through my things, and narrated it like a roast while 50 people watched. I stood there 45 minutes while they took microphone turns. My aunt mentioned I failed my driving test 3 times. My mother said she wished she stopped at one child. Inside, my room was empty. Everything in black trash bags on the curb. Locks changed. The neighbor's Ring camera caught my dad telling me not to come back until I was someone else. That the Alvin standing there was not his son. $387,000. She did the math. This woman sat down with a calculator, probably an Excel spreadsheet, and retroactively invoiced her own child for being born. Let's see, Alvin. You had approximately 23,741 meals in this household. That's going to run you about 47,000. That's not how children work. You don't get to bill someone for existing when you made the decision to create them. And Clark, this man went digging. He found termination letters. He found breakup texts, private messages from an ex-girlfriend that Alvin probably cried over alone in his room. And Clark turned them into entertainment. He hosted a PowerPoint presentation about his brother's lowest moments, like it was a TED Talk, called How to Destroy Someone Who Trusts You. 45 minutes. They passed the mic around for 45 minutes. That's longer than most therapy sessions. They gave this the runtime of a network drama episode, and when it was done, his room was already empty. They had packed his stuff before the party. This wasn't an intervention that went wrong. This was a planned execution with an after-party. I picked up every bag, smiled at him, walked away without one word. That was 4 years ago. I moved 1,100 miles away that night, changed my number, deleted social media. I spent 4 years building something they cannot see coming. Every morning I thought about that slideshow. My mother with those lists. My father saying biggest mistake into a microphone. This morning, 82 missed calls from blocked numbers. My cousin texted saying mom collapsed in the kitchen screaming for me to call back. Dad drove to 6 addresses trying to find me. They finally need something from me. I have been waiting for this exact moment. Update coming. But the last 4 years were not about healing. They were preparation. Smiled at him. Walked away without one word. Chat, this is the moment a villain is born. And I mean that as the highest compliment. Because some people would have screamed. Some people would have begged. Some people would have crumbled right there on the lawn and given them exactly what they wanted. Proof that he was weak, that he deserved it, that the biggest mistake narrative was true. But Alvin smiled, picked up his trash bags, and chose violence on a 4-year payment plan. 1,100 miles, no social media, new number. This man went into witness protection from his own family, and every single morning he woke up and chose to remember. Not to heal, not to forgive, to prepare. That's a level of commitment most people can't even give to a gym membership, and now they need him. 82 missed calls. Dad driving around like a confused GPS trying to find the son he threw away. 4 years of silence and suddenly mom is collapsing in the kitchen. Funny how the body finds emergencies when the bank account does. Update 1 first. What I built. I drove 1,100 miles to a city where I knew exactly one person from an online forum about property investment. I slept in my car for 2 weeks while working overnight stocking at a distribution center. Saved every dollar. Within 8 months, I had enough for real estate licensing courses. By year 2, I was working for a property management company. By year 3, I was buying distressed properties at auction, fixing them, flipping them, or renting them out. I am 27 now, and I own 9 rental units free and clear. But here's the thing Reddit needs to understand. I did not build this because I wanted to prove them wrong. I built this because I knew eventually they would need something from me. Every property I bought, every tenant I screened, every dollar I reinvested was fuel for what I always knew was coming. Slept in his car for 2 weeks, working overnight shifts at a distribution center. This man started at 0, actually below 0 because 0 would mean having nothing. He started with trauma and nothing. And in 4 years, he went from guy sleeping in a Honda to landlord of 9 properties. But here's what's hitting different for me. He said he didn't build this to prove them wrong. He built it because he knew they would eventually need him. That's not hope. That's not optimism. That's pattern recognition. He understood something about his family that most kids refuse to accept about their parents. These people will use you until you're empty and then come back for the packaging. So while they were toasting to getting rid of their mistake was out here studying property law like it was his religion. Every house he bought was a brick in the wall he was building. Not to keep them out, to make them have to knock. Now why they need me? This is where it gets good. My grandparents on my dad's side died when I was 19. They owned a property that has been in our family for 3 generations. Not just a house. 6 acres with a main residence and 2 additional structures, worth probably $800,000 now. My grandfather's will split everything equally between his 2 sons, my dad Robert and my uncle. But here's the part my parents conveniently never told me. My grandfather also created a trust that gave both grandsons equal rights to the property if anything happened to both sons, before the property transferred fully. My dad had a heart attack 7 weeks ago. He survived, but he can't work. My mom has been trying to refinance their current house to cover medical bills and lost income. Problem is, their house is underwater. The only liquid asset they can access is my grandfather's property. But because of how the trust works, they cannot sell or leverage that property without signatures from both grandsons. Me and Clark. Grandfather said, both grandsons. From beyond the grave, Grandpa said, I don't know what's going to happen in this family, but I'm making sure both my grandbabies have a seat at the table. And Robert just never mentioned it for years. Because Alvin was the mistake, and mistakes don't need to know about their inheritance rights, right? Also, let's talk about the poetry here. Dad had a heart attack. The same dad who stood in front of 50 people and said his son was his biggest mistake. The same dad who told him, don't come back until you're someone else. That man's own heart said, actually, I'm not doing this anymore. And now the only thing keeping them from losing everything is the signature of the son they threw in the trash. $800,000. And it can't move without Alvin. Clark already signed because Clark is a golden retriever in a finance bro costume. He does what he's told. But Alvin? Alvin has been preparing for this exact moment like it's the SATs, and he's been studying for 4 years. Clark already signed everything. But I haven't responded to a single message in 4 years. And legally, nothing moves without me. My cousin who texted me finally explained all this after I responded to her from a new number. She said my mom has been calling everyone trying to find my address. My dad has been driving to old apartments I listed on job applications years ago. Clark apparently hired someone to search for me online, but I've kept my name off everything. All my properties are under an LLC. The property is worth $800,000. My parents need at least $200,000 to stay afloat. They assumed I would just sign whatever they needed because family. They have no idea I spent 4 years learning exactly how property trusts work, exactly what my rights are, exactly how long I can delay this legally. They assumed I would just sign whatever they needed because family. They're invoking family. The same family that printed out itemized bills for his childhood. The same family that projected his breakup texts on a screen for entertainment. The same family that said bon voyage to their own son. Like he was a cruise ship they were glad to see leave the harbor. And Clark hired someone to find him. Like Alvin is a missing person. Like he's Jason Bourne and they're trying to bring him in. But here's the beautiful part, eh? All his properties are under an LLC. This man incorporated his revenge. He set up a whole legal structure just to stay invisible. That's not paranoia, that's preparation meeting opportunity. They need 200,000 to survive. And Alvin is sitting somewhere 1,100 miles away with 9 rental properties and 4 years of knowledge about exactly how long he can make them wait, legally. But here's the complication nobody saw coming. Clark's wedding to Savannah is in 6 weeks. Her family already paid for the venue, the catering, everything. And Savannah's father made it clear years ago that he expects Clark to come from a, quote, stable financial background, unquote. If my parents lose their house before the wedding, if the family finances collapse publicly, Savannah's family will pull out. Clark needs this resolved before the wedding. My parents need this resolved to survive. And I am the only person who can make any of it happen. Tomorrow, I am flying back for the first time in 4 years. Not to help, not to reconcile. I'm going to sit across from every single person who stood in that backyard, and I'm going to make them explain to my face why I should sign anything. More updates coming. This is just the beginning. Oh, this is gorgeous. Clark's entire future is balanced on a knife's edge, and the hand holding that knife belongs to his brother. The brother he put on a projector. The brother whose pain he narrated like a nature documentary. And here we see the failure in his natural habitat, clutching a rejection letter. Savannah's family wants stable financial background. Buddy, your future in-laws are about to find out that your family's idea of stability was publicly executing your brother and assuming he'd just evaporate forever. Surprise! He didn't evaporate. He incorporated, and Alvin is flying back, not crawling back, flying, on his own dime, after 4 years of building something real. He's not coming home for Thanksgiving. He's coming home for testimony. Explain to my face why I should sign anything. That's not a question. That's a deposition. Every single person who laughed at that party, who took the mic, who watched and did nothing, they're about to find out that the mistake has a very good memory and absolutely zero obligation to save them. Update 2. I landed Thursday morning, rented a car and drove straight to my parents' house. No warning, no text ahead. I wanted to see their faces when I showed up unannounced after 4 years of silence. My mom answered the door and just stood there staring at me like she was looking at a ghost. She tried to hug me, and I stepped back, told her I was here to talk about the property and nothing else. She started crying immediately, saying she couldn't believe I would be so cold after everything they sacrificed for me. I asked her if she meant the $387,000 she calculated down to the penny and handed to 50 strangers. She didn't have an answer for that. Everything they sacrificed for me, the audacity, to use the word sacrifice. Ma'am, you printed receipts. You calculated his meals. You turned basic parenting into an accounts receivable document and distributed it at a party. That's not sacrifice, that's bookkeeping with a vendetta. And she tried to hug him. 4 years of silence, 82 missed calls, and she opens with a hug like this is a Hallmark movie reunion. Like the last thing she said to him wasn't, I wish I stopped at one child, in front of 50 people into a microphone. Alvin stepped back from that hug like it was radioactive, and honestly, that single step might be the healthiest boundary I've ever seen someone set. I'm here to talk about the property and nothing else. No emotion, no anger, just business. He showed up as a landlord, not a son, because they made it very clear 4 years ago that son wasn't a role they wanted him in anyway. My dad was in the living room in a recliner looking 10 years older than the last time I saw him. He tried the disappointed father voice immediately, saying I had no idea how much stress I caused by disappearing, how my mother cried for months, how they only did what they did because they were desperate to motivate me. That was his actual word, motivate. Like publicly humiliating your son in front of everyone he knows is some kind of tough love strategy. I sat down across from him and told him exactly what I knew about the trust, that I had equal rights to the property, that nothing could be sold or refinanced without my signature, that I had spent 4 years studying property law specifically for this moment. He went quiet after that. Then Clark showed up. Savannah was with him. And this is where it gets complicated. Motivate. He said, motivate. This man genuinely looked at his son and said, yeah, we thought if we showed your breakup text to 50 people and called you a mistake and threw your belongings in trash bags on the lawn, you'd really be inspired to turn your life around. What kind of boot camp from hell is this parenting style? And then he has the nerve to talk about how much stress Alvin caused by disappearing. Sir, you told him not to come back until he was someone else. He did exactly what you asked. He left. He became someone else. Someone with 9 properties and a law degree's worth of knowledge about property trusts. And now you're stressed? Now you're the victim? The moment Alvin started explaining the trust, watching his dad go quiet, that's when the power shifted. For 23 years, this man talked down to his son, called him a mistake, calculated his worth in negative dollars. And now his son is sitting across from him speaking a language he doesn't understand, holding cards he didn't know existed. Clark immediately tried to play the reasonable brother. Said he understood I was hurt, but this was about survival now. About mom and dad keeping their house. About family stepping up when it matters. He kept saying we could work through our issues after the paperwork was signed. Kept emphasizing how time-sensitive everything was. I asked him if he remembered narrating my failures to 50 people. He said that was 4 years ago, and people make mistakes. I asked if he remembered going through my room and finding my termination letters and breakup texts. He said Dad told him to do it, like that made it acceptable. Then Savannah jumped in, said I was being petty and vindictive over something that happened years ago. Said her family had already invested over $60,000 in the wedding, and if this situation destabilized Clark's family, it would affect everything. She actually told me I should think about what kind of person holds a grudge this long. I told her I was exactly the kind of person who holds a grudge this long, and that her $60,000 wedding was not my problem. Dad told him to do it. Clark, my guy. You are a grown man in finance making 6 figures. You don't get to Dad told me to your way out of this. You went through his room. You found the texts. You made the slideshow. You narrated it. Dad didn't hold a gun to your head and force you to be the host of Destroy Your Brother, Live from the Backyard. And Savannah, oh Savannah, sweet summer child who has clearly never faced a consequence in her life. You walked into a family reckoning and tried to make it about your wedding budget. $60,000 is your concern? This man was publicly executed by his entire family, and you're worried about the catering deposit? Read the room. Actually, leave the room. This isn't about you. I'm exactly the kind of person who holds a grudge this long. That line. That's not anger. That's a mission statement. He's not pretending to be reasonable. He's not trying to seem like the bigger person. He's telling them exactly who they created when they threw him away, and they should have listened better. Here's what nobody expected. I pulled out my own paperwork. I had my attorney draw up a counteroffer before I flew in. I am willing to sign over my rights to the property, but in exchange, I want a signed written apology from both parents read aloud at a family gathering. The same kind of gathering they threw 4 years ago. I want the $387,000 itemized list formally retracted in front of witnesses. And I want 20% of whatever the property sells for deposited into an account in my name. My dad started yelling that I was trying to extort my own family. Clark said I was being unreasonable. My mom kept crying and asking why I was doing this to them. I told them they have until the wedding to decide. If they don't agree, I don't sign. The property stays frozen. Their house goes into foreclosure. And Savannah's family sees exactly how unstable the situation really is. I'm staying at a hotel 20 minutes away. Clark has already texted me 14 times trying to negotiate, but I'm not budging. Final update coming after the wedding deadline. This is far from over. He brought paperwork. An attorney drafted counteroffer. While they were scrambling to find his address, he was getting legal documents notarized. This man didn't show up for a conversation. He showed up for a transaction. And look at the terms. Public apology, read aloud, at a gathering. He's asking them to taste their own medicine. You humiliated me in front of 50 people? Cool. Now you get to humble yourselves in front of witnesses. The $387,000 list formally retracted. Not privately, not whispered, but on the record. And 20% of the sale? That's not greed, that's compensation. That's you tried to bill me for existing, now existence costs you. Why are you doing this to them? Ma'am, respectfully, this is being done with them. They're at the table, they have choices, they can say yes or no. That's more than they gave Alvin when they packed his room and changed the locks before he even knew what was happening. He's offering terms. They offered trash bags. Final update. The wedding was supposed to be last Saturday. It didn't happen. Here's how the last 6 weeks played out. Clark and my parents tried everything to get me to sign without meeting my conditions. Clark offered me money directly, $30,000 out of his own savings. I declined. My mom sent my cousin to negotiate on her behalf, begging me to accept a private apology instead of a public one. I declined. My dad finally called me himself. First time we actually spoke one-on-one in 4 years. and tried threatening me with legal action, saying he would contest the trust and tie everything up in court for years. I told him to go ahead. I had time. He didn't. Clark offered $30,000 to make this go away. Buddy, this isn't a settlement negotiation. This isn't how much will it cost to shut you up. Your brother watched you present a slideshow of his worst moments to 50 laughing guests. 30,000 doesn't cover that. 30 million doesn't cover that. Some debts aren't financial. And Mom wanted a private apology. Of course she did. She wanted to say sorry in a whisper so she could keep her reputation in a scream. Nah, you humiliated him publicly. You apologized publicly. That's not vindictive. That's symmetry. Then Dad threatened legal action. The same dad who can barely work after a heart attack, whose house is underwater, who needs this resolved yesterday. That dad said, "I'll tie this up in court for years." And Alvin said 4 words that ended that conversation forever. I have time. Ice cold. Absolute zero. Because time is the one thing Alvin has been investing in for 4 years, while they spent theirs pretending he didn't exist. 2 weeks before the wedding, Savannah's father found out the full situation. Not from me, from Clark himself, who finally cracked under pressure and admitted the family finances were in freefall. Savannah's father pulled funding for the wedding immediately, told Clark he wasn't marrying his daughter into a family that couldn't manage basic financial stability. The engagement didn't officially end, but Savannah moved back in with her parents and stopped responding to Clark's messages. That broke something in my family. My mom blamed my dad for the original party idea. My dad blamed Clark for telling Savannah's father the truth. Clark blamed me for not just signing the papers like a normal person. Nobody took responsibility for anything. And there it is. The moment the family started eating itself, Mom blames Dad, Dad blames Clark, Clark blames Alvin. It's a circle of pointing fingers and absolutely zero accountability, making it into the rotation. You know what nobody said? Maybe we shouldn't have done that to Alvin. Nobody, not once. Even when their world is literally collapsing, their instinct isn't reflection. It's deflection. They're standing in the rubble of their own choices, arguing about who lit the match, while ignoring the fact that they all brought gasoline. And Clark cracked? The golden child, the 6-figure finance bro, the narrator of the shame slideshow. He couldn't hold it together for 6 weeks. He told Savannah's father everything, probably thought honesty would save him. Instead, it proved exactly what Alvin said all along. This family's stability was always a performance. And now the audience has seen backstage. Last Monday, my parents finally agreed to my terms. All of them. The gathering happened at my aunt's house. Not 50 people this time. Just immediate family and the neighbors who had been at the original party and were willing to show up. About 20 people total. My dad stood in front of everyone with a printed statement my attorney helped draft. He read it word for word. That 4 years ago, he and my mother made a decision to publicly humiliate their son out of frustration and resentment. That the itemized list of $387,000 was created to shame me, not to collect an actual debt. That they formally retracted any claim to that amount and acknowledged I owed them nothing. My mom read her portion next. Shorter. She admitted she wished she had defended me instead of participating. She did not cry this time. Just read it flat and sat down. Then I stood up. I told everyone present that I accepted the apology as a matter of public record, that I would sign the property documents, and that I hoped every single person in that room remembered what they watched happen 4 years ago and thought about whether they would do anything different if they saw it happening to someone else's kid. They read it, word for word, in front of witnesses. The same energy they used to destroy him, now used to acknowledge what they did. That's not revenge, that's restoration. The record needed to be corrected, and now it is. But here's what's sitting with me. Mom did not cry this time. 4 years ago, she cried when Alvin set a boundary. She cried when he wouldn't hug her. She cried asking why he was doing this to them. But when she actually had to take accountability, nothing. Flat. Sat down. Because those earlier tears weren't grief. They were manipulation. And when manipulation stopped working, so did the waterworks. And Alvin's final statement, I hope every single person in that room remembered what they watched happen 4 years ago. That wasn't for his parents. That was for the witnesses, the neighbors who laughed, the family who took the mic. He looked every single one of them in the eye and asked, would you do anything different? Would you say something? Would you help? He made them sit in that question, and they'll be sitting in it for a long time. I signed the papers the next morning. My 20% comes out to about $160,000 once the property sells. My parents will clear their debts and keep their house. Clark's engagement is still in limbo. Savannah hasn't spoken to him in 3 weeks. I flew home 2 days ago. I'm back in my apartment 1,100 miles away, surrounded by lease agreements and renovation quotes and tenant applications. My life here is real and solid in mine. My dad texted me yesterday asking if we could try to rebuild a relationship now that everything is resolved. I haven't responded. I don't know if I will. 4 years ago, he told me not to come back until I was someone else. I came back as exactly who I always was, just with leverage. That's the end of the story. Thanks for following along, Reddit.